Hello and welcome to The Man You Made to Be, the podcast. I'm Charles Merritt, and I've cried during most films I've watched this year, including Cats. But that could be because I'm allergic.
Wow.
I'm joined by Martin Saunders, who will cry if you don't go out and buy the book that this podcast is based on. Big boys don't cry. Maybe that's why I, at 5'8", do. But many of you are taller than me, or will be eventually, and will be expected to turn off the waterworks, much like when they closed my local swimming pool in York, Waterworld. It was great. It had 3 water slides, and one of them was called The Edge, and it was literally just this vertical drop. And once a guy went down it, and his teeth came out before he did. It's probably why they closed. I digress. Emotions. Is it okay for guys to feel things? Or should we hold in our emotions, wait until they've been shaken up, had a Mento shoved inside them, and then explode like a bottle of Coke? Let's find out. Hello, Martin.
Are you all right, Charles?
I'm okay.
Are you feeling emotional today?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, great.
Do you know what? Genuinely, Waterworks makes me a bit upset.
Waterworks. So I presume...
Waterworld, even.
Well, I presume this was kind of like in the newspapers and proved in a court of law that this happened, that a guy's teeth went ahead of his...
No, it's just like a school rumour.
Ah, okay. So we just need to, just in case those people are still operating and
they
scouring
closed
YouTube.
down. They've closed it down, and they've replaced it with a normal swimming pool.
Oh.
And I'm not okay with that.
Because you've seen what could have been.
Oh, there was one with like massive rubber rings that you went down, and that was nice and gentle.
Yeah.
And then there was another one on a mat, but like people ate them or something. I don't know.
People ate the mats?
They always had like bite marks in them, and like.
There's a lot of stuff going on with teeth at this place. What on earth? Where do you come from?
That was also the place.
Yes.
That was also the place where we went on a youth group trip out, and we went to Waterworld, and I saw my leader like lying back, and I was like, ooh. So I started tickling his feet, like ha ha ha, and then this random bloke next to him was killing himself with laughter because I was tickling his feet, and I was like, I don't know you, that's weird. Turns out it wasn't my leader, and I was just tickling this random guy's feet.
Right.
And I just swam for the lazy river to get away.
You are.
So I just like, but then I came back round and it was that awkward thing of, oh no, I just had to keep swimming around this river.
You are like a walking sitcom.
Yeah. So I want to play a little game.
Oh, great.
And then I'm going to
I have high expectations for that now.
And then I'm going to tell another embarrassing story
That's a surprise.
involving emotions. And then we'll get into the questions.
Okay, great.
This game is very short.
Okay.
It's very speedy.
Okay.
I just want you to give me the first emotion, the first emotion of how these things make you feel.
Okay.
They're just random stuff.
So give me an example.
So, for example, tissues.
Ambivalent?
Ambivalent. Great.
Yeah.
Some of them are better than others.
Okay, great.
It's going to be quick fire.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it.
Okay,
I'm excited.
you ready?
I'm ready. Do I need to just let my emotions bubble to the surface a bit?
Yep.
That's happened now.
Carrots.
Happy.
Puppies.
What emotional reaction do I have to puppies?
It can be just a noise.
Joyful.
Great. Lamps.
Ambivalent.
Radiators.
Grateful.
Satsumas.
Not that bothered.
Red Riding Hood.
Scared now.
Darts.
Love.
Oh. Tablecloths. Okay. Toilet rugs. You know those rugs that go around the bottom of the toilet?
Ew. No, don't like those at all.
Yeah, great. That was
That's the game?
That was the game.
Oh, wow.
Look, I prepare these, so for my emotions, just pretend that was great.
Oh, yeah. Do you know what? I love that so much.
Maybe you could play at home as well. I'll send out the list and you can just do that at home.
Why don't you do that, Charles?
Well, that might be my new embarrassing story of just trying a game that completely falls on its face. I was meant to be talking about another story, but maybe that would be enough. I'm going to reveal the most embarrassing time I've ever cried.
Oh. Yeah, I'd like to hear that.
So, I don't know whether to give you the backstory first or just tell you the story and then follow it up.
Yeah.
I think probably just tell you the story.
Do.
So, Ollie, producer Ollie, who hasn't got his mic on,
It is now on.
is now on. We often go to the cinema together to watch films.
Yeah.
We do.
And it was just another, let's say, Monday, and we were going to see a film. Got into the car, and he turns around and he hands me a mini Toblerone,
I did.
Oh,
and I cried.
right. Because you've had a traumatic incident involving a
I
Toblerone?
just really like Toblerones.
You cried?
Yeah.
I'm actually getting emotional again. I
Okay.
just really like Toblerones.
Yeah, and
They're
so...
like expensive. You don't get them often,
Yeah.
and they taste really good.
Did you have other stuff going on, and that this was like a, you know, when you just need someone to be nice to you. You know, you spent all day with me.
Yeah.
I've been really horrible to you, forcing you to record podcasts.
Yep.
Making me the star.
Yeah.
Without any payment.
Yep.
And
Wait.
then you just need somebody to show you some love. And then you got into the car with Ollie, and he pulled out a small Toblerone.
That.
No,
That
there was
makes
none of that. It was genuinely just the Toblerone.
Wow.
Are you sure it wasn't me you were crying at?
No, it was
So
the
happy to see
Toblerone.
me.
It was just exciting to have a Toblerone.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's valid.
Has anyone else cried over Toblerone before? Please let us know. Someone must have done.
I wasn't expecting you to cry over the Toblerone when I
How long
bought
did you
it.
cry for, and to what degree?
Well, it was unusual because Charles had just entered the car and I was like, oh look, I bought you a Toblerone, and then I turn around and he's like crying.
Like weeping
Yeah.
openly.
Well, it was
It was more like a
Yeah.
yeah. I don't think it wasn't like I was streaming.
no.
Oh.
It was only a mini one. But if it was
Can
a full
I
size,
can I
might
tell
have
you a
been on the
much
floor.
more emotional story about
Yeah.
a time when I cried?
Yeah.
Actually, I've got
Please
a silly
do.
one,
Okay.
and then I've got an action. If you might cry again
Oh wow.
when I
look
tell you
forward
this.
to it.
I might cry when I tell. I don't think I've ever told this story. So the first story is
This is
last
the one
time.
that I'm not meant to cry.
The last time I cried
Okay.
was watching Wonder Woman. There's a bit, I think, in the trenches in the war where she goes over the top, and I felt so emotional watching her run head first into the machine guns with her. Don't do it; it'll set me off. That I. Are you being?
That was
Are
her,
you
like-
being Wonder Woman?
That was when the bomb comes and she
Oh
goes.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Anyway, so I found myself crying, which
Yeah.
I found, I don't know, slightly embarrassing because I was in a packed cinema and it was Wonder Woman and it was an action scene.
And that was the most recent time you cried.
Yeah.
And that was like 2016 or something like that. That was like 2017.
I haven't cried a lot recently. I'm not a big
Wow.
crier. I'm not, I don't.
I think I've cried. Genuinely, that intro is true. I think I've cried at most films I've seen this year,
Right. I mean, I haven't had.
including
I
Cats.
can confirm that. He
I
cries a
actually
lot.
did cry at Cats.
Actually, no. I cried at a funeral recently. There we
Okay.
go. But
Oh, wow.
that's not a funny story. But then
Yeah.
I will tell you about a time when I really cried and I was inconsolable. So you may not believe this, but when I was 11, I was selected to do a modelling assignment
Shut up.
by Woolworths, who no longer exists. But Woolworths was a department store.
Woolworths was the best.
Yeah, it was like a high street department store, and it had like it was random. They did pick and mix,
Yeah.
household utensils, toys,
Yeah. That's where I got
music,
my.
and some clothes.
That's where I'd get my Doctor Who action figures from.
There you go. It's a bit like if you have a big supermarket now. Woolworths is like all the extra bits that the supermarkets sell apart from food.
That's a really good
That's
way
what
of putting it.
Woolworths would do. And so Woolworths had a clothes line, and they had their own catalogue, the Ladybird clothing range. And I was selected as a model for it, along with some other people at my school. I think our school was near the office where they were doing the PR for it or something. Anyway, in that year that I got selected, I gained a lot of weight very rapidly. And I'd gone from being one of those skinny kids who can scare people by exposing their ribs.
Oh.
I mean, not literally. That's like a horror film. I went from being You know what I mean. You know what I mean, right? I'm not going to do it for you, but I can't do it anymore. But you could do that,
Yeah.
and then you could scare people because you could see ribs. I was that guy to probably gaining about 5 stone extra in weight. I really did add quite a lot of extra bulk at that time, and so that happened between being invited to do it and then a few months later actually having the photo shoot thing, and yeah. And so when it came to actually doing the photo shoot, they came to give me some clothes, and there was no clothes that would fit.
Oh.
And so I had to put on a couple of things, and they didn't fit or they looked ridiculous. And so they were really trying to give me something to wear. All the other kids were going to the photo shoot. So the only thing they had was a really large winter coat. And so I modelled the incredibly large winter coat. And I put it on, and as I zipped it up, I just started to cry because I had this realization of Ollie's gone. Just to let you know, I'm welling up just thinking about 11-year-old me, and I zipped up the coat and I had a little cry, and then I had to stop just so they could take a couple of photos, and then I was on page 47 of the Ladybird catalogue.
Yeah, but I bet you rocked that coat.
I did get to keep the coat.
Wow.
I think probably because they couldn't get me out of it at the end. But I do remember getting to keep the coat, which was a massive thing because obviously, I mean, literally.
Woolworths, man.
Yeah, and then to make matters worse, Woolworths went out of business. I don't think those things are connected.
I mean, I think there was a long time distance between you putting on a coat and them going out of business.
Anyway, that's my crying story.
Wow. I don't know which ones was worse.
So what are we talking about this time?
We're talking about emotions.
Ah, yes.
And particularly male emotions. Not that there's difference between female emotions and male emotions, but talking about as males, like how do we show our emotions?
Yeah.
Because I think it's fair to say that other than maybe anger or mild happiness, like men aren't really, not necessarily allowed, but aren't expected to show their emotions. Which is a problem for me because I'm quite an emotional man.
You're a big crier.
I am a big crier. I cry a lot. Thanks. That was a.
No, I mean, it's not. I'm not
No.
making fun of you. I'm just saying
No.
you are a big crier. I know you to be a guy who cries a lot.
Yeah, I do. I also am very happy when I'm happy.
Yeah. When you're, for instance, doing your tap dancing.
Tap dancing, or when we get a shoe down from the church ceiling.
Oh, that was a great moment.
One of our young people threw a shoe up.
Yeah.
Wasn't it your son
My
who threw
son,
the shoe?
yeah, threw a shoe into a place that was impossible to get it down from.
And it took us 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And we had a massive...
We constructed
hole.
a giant poking device.
Yeah, we did. And we just kept poking. But
Yeah.
the problem was every time we poked it, it would go in.
Yeah.
So we had to
Made the
work
problem
out.
worse,
It
essentially.
did.
Yeah.
And then we got it down.
Yeah.
And there's a video of me just screaming as I ran around the hall.
Because the joy was so...
The joy was overwhelming.
Extreme
I was
emotion.
literally leaping for joy.
So that's interesting. So what you had there was a context
Mm.
where you felt able to express emotion. Cinema is quite good for that, actually.
Yes.
But also things like sports events, sports stadiums, are very good as a place where culturally we're allowed to feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're allowed to sort of express and show our emotions. And I think what is absolutely true is that men and women both feel a great deal, but women are culturally conditioned and allowed to express their emotions much more, whereas men in general, and of course we're always speaking in generalizations here, forgive us, men in general are told to repress their emotions, aren't they? So when I was writing this book, talking to some teenage boys, they actually said what I had assumed to be the case, but they actually said it. We're not allowed to feel stuff. We're not allowed to cry. We're not allowed to show emotions. We have to bottle it up because that's what guys do. And that's still very much like the prevalent cultural narrative, isn't it? That guys are supposed to be strong, whatever that means, and not show their emotions, whereas emotion is a female thing. And that's not true. We're here to say no to that.
No.
Was that a little voice you did?
I just wanted to throw
No.
in my no with you.
No.
I was with you, and I wanted to support you
Oh,
by
good.
saying no.
But then you did a little voice.
And then
Like a
it just
cartoon
came
character.
out. It came out weird. So why do you think it's so ingrained in our culture that we're not meant to do that? Do you think it's due to the media? Do you think it's just the culture that we're in?
Yeah. Well, there's a big long story that goes back a very long way, and I'm not a social historian, but surprisingly, but like clearly, like if we look back even to the a few generations above us, we see this kind of stereotype, archetype of what a man should be, and it is like big and strong and sporty and swilling beer and eating like manly meaty foods and spicy foods and things like this. This stereotype about what a man should be, and then there's a stereotype about the role a man should play in the home and in relation to the opposite sex, and all of that stuff goes back way into our history. And then it gets reinforced. So it's been reinforced and handed down. And, I'm sure when you were a child, you had blue toys because you were a boy and blue baby clothes because you were a boy. And I certainly had that. And there is the impact of that is being lessened. Like I feel like as a culture, we've started to get our heads around the fact that it's not helpful to just gender inanimate objects like that. Like I remember when I went to buy a piano from the Early Learning Centre, you could buy it in blue or pink. I'm like, what? It's a piano. Why do you need a colour for your piano? Anyway, I digress. I feel we got better at it, but there's this massive weight of cultural history that is still going to feed itself through our media and through all this stuff for years and years to come. When anyone ever watches an old movie or an old TV show or reads a book or looks at history from anything that's past, we're always going to be drawing on these old cultural narratives. Where men were a certain way and women were a certain way, and the interaction between the two had a certain stereotype to it. So I think that's where, in essence, it all comes from.
Wow.
I think. I don't know.
You should become a social.
I'm not a social historian. I don't even know if that's a thing.
I don't know. Probably most things are. So last week we were looking at role models.
Yes.
We mentioned the Big J. We dropped that in. We dropped that into the conversation now. So
Yeah.
Jesus.
I was trying to think of a funny Big
Yeah.
J, but I couldn't.
No.
Jennifer Lopez.
No.
All right.
We dropped Jesus into conversation, and you actually started talking last week about how Jesus is different to many cultural figures or media figures
Yeah.
in terms of how he deals with his emotions and what we see in the Bible
Yeah.
in terms of his emotions.
Yeah.
My favourite verse in the whole of the Bible
Yes.
is this. I have to look at it because otherwise I can't remember it.
This is your favourite.
My favourite.
And
verse.
have you not managed to memorise it?
No. I know the words, I just don't know where it is.
Okay.
It's John 11:23.
No.
No.
Is it? Are you sure?
No.
Are you sure though?
No.
Do you mean 35?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
John, I thought if I saw it really quickly, I could memorize it, but I didn't.
Right.
John 11 verse 35. My favorite verse. In
What
the
is
whole
it? What is
Bible.
this verse?
It's also the shortest verse in the whole Bible in terms of English translations.
Okay.
It's 2 words.
Yes.
That's how I remember
Really
it.
building this up.
Jesus. That's the first word.
Yes.
The second word. Wept.
Ah.
Jesus wept.
Yes.
That's really short, but for me has so much impact and allows me to do it almost gives me permission to cry.
Yeah. As in, because Jesus wept,
Yeah.
it must be okay for me to weep.
Yeah, it's not like many. Can't think of many examples of people who cry openly, or that is recorded that they cried, or maybe soap operas. But other than that, it's not really in films and stuff that you see people crying in. And the idea that Jesus, who was the Son of God,
Yeah.
cried,
Yeah.
blows my mind slightly, because it's like Jesus has so much power, has so much authority, and yet in that moment he wasn't afraid to show his emotion. And it wasn't that he was on his own.
No.
He was in front of a huge group of people. In fact, people even commented on it and was like, "Oh, Jesus is crying. Like, why is he doing that?" And I think that still happens today. If someone starts crying, people are like, "Oh, they're crying," and they point fingers and stuff. But it's just so great that Jesus, who was the Son of God, cries openly.
Yeah.
what a role model, what an example, what permission, what and he was also, as you said last week, ripped, probably. We don't know this for certain, but the likelihood is he wasn't skinny and scrawny. He was probably quite muscular because of carpentry and stuff. He was also very wise, very capable, and yet and very popular.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
And yet he was comfortable enough within himself.
Yeah.
To cry openly.
And also he knew he was God. He knew he had the power of God and access to that. He knew that even though his friend had died, he had the power to raise him from the dead. And he probably had a fair idea that he was about to do that. So he cries when his friend Lazarus has died. And so he goes there and he's about to bring him back to life. But before he brings him back to life, he cries. And I think it's where we see that Jesus really was fully human. So he was absolutely God, but also completely a human being. And therefore he felt stuff. Even sometimes when we say, oh, that's an irrational feeling. It's a bit like that. It wasn't irrational because he had all this love and care and concern swirling around his brain and his, and his body at that time. But he knew in one sense that he could make this stop, he could make it go away, and yet he still had that vivid emotional reaction that led him to cry. So it is a really amazing moment, and yeah, it is only 2 words, but it is one of the most extraordinary glimpses we get of Jesus, especially around this topic of emotion.
Yeah, and I think for me personally, emotion is really important to talk about. So I didn't always used to be majorly emotional. I used to bottle up a lot of stuff, and I learned quite in the hard way that wasn't good for me and good for my mental health, and was actually very damaging, and it still has effects on me now. Yeah, I'm still working out what that is, and so I think it's really important that we know that it's okay to have emotions, that it's okay to not just to have emotions, but to demonstrate and to let other people know that we have emotions too, is really, really important.
Yes, so I talk about this a bit in the book. And by the way, the reason we're doing this podcast is so you don't have to read the book.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of this podcast. You now don't need to read the book. We've given you the book in podcast form, in free podcast form.
But it is worth reading if you get a chance.
You can read it if you like. But we talk a lot in the book about the impact of not having a healthy kind of approach to emotions on our mental health as guys. So there's a really shocking statistic, which is even if you take the most conservative estimates, men are 3 times as likely as women to attempt and what they call complete suicide. So actually to die by suicide, which is an absolute tragedy. And the difference in those numbers, the difference that it's 3 times more likely for men to die by suicide than women, should give us pause. We should be thinking, what is wrong with our culture? Now, on one level, what's wrong with our culture that anybody could ever get to that point? But, that's a different thing. But that 3 times as many men, there is something clearly to look at around men's mental health. Really, something really profound that we need to be talking about. And I think it's got to have something to do with the fact that culturally we are making men bottle up their emotions. We are forcing guys to feel like they can't ever have a sort of outlet for feelings of pain and grief and sadness and all these other there's loads of emotions that men aren't really allowed to express, and what happens is guys bottle those up, and then what happens when you bottle something up? Eventually there's an explosion, isn't there? And there's that can end up being quite violent, or that can end up with men getting to the point where they feel they've got no other option than to end it all. And that is an absolute tragedy. And so that is, if there's no other reason why we need to start getting better at talking about emotions and allowing each other to experience emotions, that's a really good reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to come back to what you were talking about earlier, that it's okay to feel these emotions, that they're a natural thing. And I think that's why that that verse really speaks to me. Like, it's a natural thing. It's obviously part of our human condition is to feel those emotions. So they're valid emotions, and a lot of the time there are valid reasons for those emotions.
Yeah.
And this is something I tell the kids, and I know it's slightly cheesy, but it's true, and it works for most of the emotions except for joy.
Yeah.
But I think most of the emotions, it's okay to be sad, but it's not okay to stay sad.
Yeah.
Like, you need to, but it takes time, and it's not like a instant fix, but you need to recognize that it's okay to be sad at times, but it's just not okay to stay sad.
And when we say it's not okay to stay sad, I think what we mean is you have to ask for help.
Yeah.
Like, we are here for each other. Like, if you take the Christian perspective, God made us not to be alone, to be in community. Yeah. If you take a humanist perspective, like, the human race is all we have, so we have to be there for each other. And so if you are still feeling these emotions, you have to share it with someone. You have to lean on somebody else and say, I need help. And sometimes the bravest thing is actually admitting to our own weakness. Like, the bravest thing is saying, I actually feel like I can't cope. I feel sad. I feel anxious. I feel overwhelmed. Anything that you feel, I have great grief in my life. I feel great pain, whatever it is. There has got to be a point where you actually take the step of talking to another person, and walking through it together is always going to be, you're always going to get a better chance of getting through it than trying to suffer with it on your own. Because if you suffer with it on your own, inevitably what you start to do is you have this whole internal narrative going around that tells you to stop being so silly. And that again leads it to bottling it up. So, guys, seriously, if you're listening to this conversation and actually it resonates and you're like, yeah, actually, I do really struggle with this stuff, or I feel great sadness, or I feel really overwhelmed by something, like, reach out to somebody, find somebody you can trust. Don't try and do it alone.
Yeah, and I think, I wrote down here, it's great if you do have like a youth worker or like someone else in your community or like school or wherever. I don't know how old you are, but if you struggle to talk to someone or you don't have anyone to talk to, Samaritans are an amazing charity who you can phone for free and you can talk to them and just help you process it. They're not necessarily going to be able to help you on the journey, but it'll be a good starting place to just be able to kind of put your narrative out there and to just put it externally rather than letting it swirl around in your head. And the number for that is 116 123. So if you want to ring Samaritans to do that, if you haven't got anyone else around you, then please
do that.
Yeah, please do that. And it's not just sadness, as you said. Yeah. Like, it's fear, it's anger, it's jealousy, it's all those horrible emotions that aren't good for us in the long run. Yeah.
And I still think, like, if you're feeling angry or you're feeling great jealousy or you're feeling afraid, like, even though you might feel like it reflects badly on you, like, you've got to let go of that. Talk to another person and say, do you know what? I'm really struggling with anger. I mean, maybe don't try and process it with the person you're angry at, like, or jealous of, or whatever. But this is what this is what friendship is about. It's about being there for each other when we're actually struggling, when we're not okay, and it's really important that we admit when we're not okay. That's I guess that's our main point today, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's okay not to be okay. But make sure you get some help if that's where you are.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Martin. That was a different podcast to others, but it's a really important one. And I'm so glad that you wrote about this and therefore we get to do it on the podcast, because it's something that, as I said, like, in my own life, like, I needed to. I wish I'd heard some of this when I was younger, because it would have made a massive difference to my life now and in the past as well. Wonderful. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Remember to follow us on social media at TMYMTB podcast, and you can email us as well. The details, I'm sure Ollie's going to put it on the screen now, so I don't even know why I bother reading it out.
Because Ollie enjoys you struggling with it.
I know. One day I'm actually going to be able to memorize it, just like John 11:35, Jesus wept.
Try and do it now, without looking at anything.
TMYMTB podcast.
That's right. Yeah, very good.
Do you know what it is? It's because I feel like it should be TMB, but it's not. It's MTB.
Well, don't confuse people.
Sorry. It's on the screen.
It's on the screen.
Cool. Yeah.
What are we doing next time?
Next time, well, we're not doing it.
Maybe we shouldn't say what it is.
Yeah. We're talking about sex next time. So that's the one that you've probably wanted to see.
That's the one you've started with, probably.
Yeah.
You've probably already seen that one.
You probably didn't watch the first 4 episodes and you're just going to move on to number 5. But
That's fine. We do the same thing.
well, I didn't. I read from the beginning of the book. But
Ollie, where did you start?
Um,
okay. Goodbye, everyone.